And good afternoon. Welcome to Questions About God in the Bible. Today's question has to do with the unicorn. I received an email a couple of months ago, and I've looked in several different places to make sure that I had enough detail to even address it here. A person had written in saying that they had read a translation of the Bible where it used the term unicorn to describe an animal. And I went and looked at several different translations. You can do that with software these days. And I have not found myself a translation that uses the term unicorn. There is one modern version of the King James, the New King James, where it'll make reference to a goat with one horn, and I think that's probably what they're talking about. If that's not it, then the person who asked that question, please contact me again and give me the specific scripture reference and the translation that you were looking at when you saw this. But let me give you a couple of just kind of a brief explanation here of whenever you're reading the Bible in English, and there are many, many translations out there, that's the good news. They are all taking text that was either written in Hebrew, a little bit of Aramaic in the Old Testament, and Greek for the New Testament, and the scholars are trying to translate what English word or phrase would best explain that text in your language. Some scriptures, translations are what we call literal translations, word-for-word translations. The King James and the New King James would fall into that category, but so would some other modern translations like the New American Standard, for example. Other translations are what we call thought-for-thought translations, where the word that they're choosing to use in English or the phrase that they're choosing to use in English may not be the precise translation from that Greek or Hebrew or Aramaic phrase, but it expresses it in a way that the modern reader reading the scripture in English would be able to understand. The New International Version would be one example of a thought for that, where they're trying to make sure they get the meaning right in the modern language that people could read and understand. But you also have some paraphrases that clearly label themselves as paraphrase. The Living Bible, one that I used a lot as a teenager, was a paraphrase where they're not trying to be precise with the grammar, but they're still wanting to get the idea across to you. So whichever person saw the term unicorn, the only place in Scripture, because when we think of unicorn, we're thinking of the mythological animal that would be a horse with one horn coming out. There is a passage in Daniel. It is in Daniel's prophetic section. In Daniel chapters 7 and 8, Daniel starts to have visions that are symbolic revelations to him from God of things that are going to happen in the future. Daniel does not understand what his visions are, but he remembers them, he writes them down, he keeps them in his heart, and when he prays and does fasting to try to get an answer to what do these dreams mean, the angel Gabriel is sent from God to come and visit Daniel and to reveal to Daniel what is going to happen to Daniel's Jewish people in the future. When Daniel is going through that experience, he is by then an old man who has lived most of his life in exile in Babylon because he was carried away from his home as a teenager around Jerusalem to be in exile, and now he's an old man and he's had these visions, and Gabriel is explaining to him what the visions entail. One of the visions involved a goat with a single conspicuous horn in the center of its head. Male goats will normally have horns on either side of the head, but this one is described in the vision as being a goat with a singular horn in the center of the head, coming up against a ram, and they're having this battle. It was a symbolic vision that Gabriel interprets for Daniel to let him know that there is going to be a leader rising up from Greece who will come towards the east, and this ram represents the Persian ruler. The Persians had taken over from the Babylonians, who will oppose him, and that the Greek kingdom is going to win. That happened in later history. Beyond Daniel's time, it was still between where Daniel dies and the Old Testament ends. For us, it was ancient history. But to Daniel, it was a future event. It is one of the things that we're going to discuss in the new course that we're starting tonight, based on the questions that came in last week, literally by mail, about, are we in Daniel's 70th week now? When does the Lord return? There were several questions in one that we gave the overview answer to, and I made mention of the fact that these questions are so good that it requires more than the short answer. This segment is a short answer Q&A to really deal with. So tonight we're going to start a new course where we're going to call it God's Plan of the Ages, and we're literally going to start with a blank whiteboard and chart it out so that you can see God's revealed prophetic plan for mankind. But for the question that came in about the presence of a unicorn in the Bible, I think it is a reference to that goat, not horse, that goat with one horn, which represented the kingdom that we now know as Alexander the Great. When Alexander dies, he does not have a male heir. He dies at the age of 33. His kingdom is broken up among his 4 generals. The vision in Daniel chapter 8 of the goat with one conspicuous horn that's broken off into 4 pieces, I think that's where whatever this modern translation was that used the word unicorn instead of goat with one horn came from. If that's not the passage that you were reading, please contact me and let me know. Keep the questions coming. Thanks for watching.